we're going to get to those flirting exercises in just a second, but I remember reading something that it said, like, I forgot what the percentage was, but it was like a ridiculously large percentage of women couldn't identify their vagina in a lineup. Like, they didn't know what it looked like, you know, which I thought, you know, I thought that at the time, because this was years ago, I thought that was a little, I was like, what, really? Because, you know, us guys, we know our dicks anywhere. You know, that's your best friend. He's gonna be your friend to the end. So, you know, we know that. So, but I you know, and then I thought about it. I was like,
it's okay. Y'all are taught it's okay to have your hands all down there, to touch all on yourselves. A female touches herself, a little, you know, parent is like, no, don't touch there. Dudes walking around hands in pants outside.
You know what's funny?
You know, I'm trying to just put their hands on themselves in private.
I was going to quickly say, Kente, was funny. Even though I was telling my signature phrase is, ooh, say it again. Now, I was saying that phrase even before I ever saw the TV show Sex and the City. But one of the things that made me emphasize that phrase more, related to what Maisha was just talking about. There was one episode, you know, Samantha was the most open-minded one, and they were having breakfast, and Samantha was talking about her pussy, and she was talking about how she was brushing her pussy with a soft brush, and one of the four is real prudish. I want to say the dark-haired one, and
yes.
So she, you know, she was blushing like crazy. And anyway, get to the point. The dark-haired one says she had never, ever looked at her pussy. And Samantha implored her to get in front of a mirror and take a soft brush and familiarize herself with her pussy. And then she made her say, say right now, I love my pussy. At first she was like, no, I can't say that. Samantha was like, say it. And she said, okay, I'm going to say it just once. She said, I love my vagina. She said, no, say I love my pussy. She was like, okay, I love my pussy. And then Samantha said, say it again. She's like, I love my pussy. She was like, say it again. She said, I love my pussy. I told everybody that was my favorite episode, like, ever.
That's funny. All right, so Maisha, you were talking about some flirting exercises. Can you give us some of the flirting exercises that you may do with a client? Can you give us some of the flirting exercises you may do with your client? And being that we have another lady on the panel there, maybe you guys can do the flirting exercise.
Like me act out what she tells me to do?
Okay.
Or is it for a lady to do, or does it matter? Or female?
No, it's usually for ladies. I mean, I give them specific activities. I don't tell them what to say because it has to be authentic and come from them. So what I would say, I'm very bold when I speak
then you want to do it without.
I'm similar to Alan in that way. I mean, I don't walk up to a man and say, you know, I want to fuck you. But I'm fairly bold when I speak to men, and a lot of women would never be that bold. So for a lot of women, I just need them. I mean, y'all don't know. I just trying to get them to talk to it. Just one client I had her dress her version of sexy. You know, whatever that was, that made her feel like, you know, her pheromones were out and about, like she was ovulating. Because that's when we're the boldest women. When we're ovulating and we're like searching for dick. That happens to us.
On the head.
It's true. Ladies know it's true. When we're ovulating, somebody better be doing something right now. And I wanted her to go out and go dancing. And she needed to come home with 3 phone numbers. So she needed to get 3 phone numbers from 3 different men. I have them do stuff like that. Because women aren't accustomed to doing that. And men are not accustomed to it either. It turns a man on when a woman asks for his number. They're not used to it. That gets them excited. I want them to feel the power of that. because women don't realize how much power we have in our pussy.
It's a lot.
And you know what? You know,
All right, so
I
go
was just
ahead.
gonna say the stuff you say to dudes don't even gotta be clever for real. I remember saying to this one guy who I thought was just dreamy and gorgeous. I asked him, I said, "Do you believe in love at first sight, or do you need me to walk by you again?" And he was just like, "I believe right now." You know, like you don't even gotta say anything clever. You just or look for look at it for longer than 30 seconds.
There you go.
It don't really take a lot.
Right.
All right. So Maisha.
So I'll give you an example of something that I did because I have no shame and I don't care. And let you be a religious man. The more religious you claim to be, the more I'm coming. The more I'm coming for you. So I live in New York City, by the way. So I live in Harlem. I live in New York, and but I was downtown, and I was doing a walk for some organization, and there were these two fine men standing on a corner. I guess Jehovah's Witnesses, whatever, with the pamphlets. You know, they stand on the corner. And I was walking by with my brother, and I was like, "Wait, hold on." So I'll be right back. So I walked back to the two dudes. I was like, "Let me tell you something. If church was full of men that looked like y'all, I would be in there every Sunday singing Hallelujah, praise Jesus." And at first they were like, and then they burst out laughing. They were like, I said, "I'm just saying, I want to let y'all know y'all are fine. I just want to let you know if y'all were in every church, I would say, I said, you might have me." Thank you.
I like that much because I feel like we gotta let them. Like I love telling men when they look good to me, like whether I'm single or not. I love like, "Oh my gosh, you're a nice piece of chocolate," or "Oh my gosh, you so," or like, can I touch your arm?" Like all of that. And it's so easy because they so willing, open, easy, like, "Yeah, touch, yeah, sure." So
All right. So now you were talking about the flirting exercise. So can you do the flirting exercise with Alan?
I can, but I can only do it. But there's not. So that let me be clear. There's not an exercise to do because I can't tell a woman to do what I do. I can flirt with Alan the way I flirt. I don't have any problem doing that. But I don't have there's not a, this is what you do to flirt, because then it's not authentic. And if it's not authentic and it's not you, you're gonna come off looking stupid. And I don't want any woman looking stupid. No man can, no matter how much Alan coaches a man, if he tries to come up to a woman, he's like, "So you're gonna fuck?" And that's not what he said or how he sounds. He's gonna get shot down.
Yeah, he'd be lucky if he's only shot down with that.
You have to flirt from your perspective of what sexy is. But the point of flirting is for you to bring whatever your sexy is to the forefront of who you are. None of us can flirt like the other. But what I will say this for women, and that there was a woman in the chat room who said she's never approached a guy for flirting. I will say this: if you're flirting with a guy, isn't just about the things that you say. Men are visual. So when women are flirting, it's about where we're putting our hands. It's about if our hands are here, if we're gently caressing or stroking our skin, as if we got a finger in our mouth because it draws attention to our lips. It's about whether or not we're playing with our hair. There's something about that does something for men. It's the light stroke that we may give him as we're talking to him and we touch his shoulder just gently or just lightly. It's the tone in our voice, the way we change what we say, and we're like, "Yeah, I kind of like that." There's a whole magic to flirting, so it's not just about what you're saying, it's also how you're saying. It's your body language. Where are you? Are you facing him directly? Because that's actually confrontational. Or you slightly turn to the side to soften up who you are. How are your legs? Are your legs crossed toward him, saying that you're open and receptive? Or are they crossed away from him, saying, "Get the hell away from me"? There's a lot of body language that goes into flirting. So I go over that.
Okay. Now I'm curious where y'all learned your techniques from. I mean, did you guys have like a Yoda-like figure that came from some hill and imparted this wisdom? Is it just years of being in the game? Where do you guys get your from?
I mean, I can tell you for me, I watched my mother. And I didn't realize she was flirting, but I watched my mother who could flirt very well. And the rest of it is really flirting is less about yourself. I study men. Men are my favorite subjects to study. So I study men, how they think, what they say, how they act, what they mean, what turns them on, what they feel. I love to study men. And men are not very difficult to unravel. They really are. We can be complicated. We can be. But men are not that difficult to unravel. So I study men and understand how they think, and that way I can give them what they need.
What about you, Alan? Where you get your game from?
Well, first of all, I want to apologize if I look just extra dark. I had a lamp in here and the fucking light bulb just burned out and shit. But before this lamp burned out, you probably saw a poster behind my right shoulder called "Talk Dirty to Me," and that was a movie that GQ magazine once ranked in the top 10 best adult films ever, and that's where it actually started, believe it or not. And my listeners and followers know this story. I don't want to go into all the details. But yeah, the summer before my freshman year in college, a buddy, he liked to put porno movies in and crack jokes about them. He wouldn't even watch them to get aroused. He just liked to pick them apart and crack jokes. And he put in this movie called Talk Dirty to Me. And the lead character played by this porn actor named John Leslie, in the movie his name was Jack. And he was essentially mode one. He would approach women, and at some point in the first 5 minutes of the conversation, he would let these women know he wanted to fuck them. And I was just like, wow. I've never seen anybody just let a woman know it. Now, my brother, who was present, he was quickly like, hey, bro, this is a movie. This shit's scripted. You can't take mental notes on that shit because, But the first thing I picked up, and this relates, you probably remember early in this conversation, I said there's 4 types of women I teach my male clients about. And that would be a reciprocator, a rejecter, a wholesome pretender, and a manipulative time waster. And I'll give the gist of each, and then I'll go back to the movie story. The first 2 are kind of self-explanatory. A reciprocator would be if I approached Rashim Maisha, let them know I was attracted to him, found him sexy, and I wanted to connect with him sexually. And they said, I'm feeling you too. Let's do this, or let me find out a little bit more about you, and then let's make it happen. Rejector, if I approach either woman and they let me know pretty straightforwardly, hey, I'm already seeing somebody, or I'm not really feeling the casual sex vibe, whatever it may be, I accept that. Men, and I teach the men I work with that rejection is inevitable. You can't let that get you bent out of shape. Now, the 2 trickier types of women is the wholesome pretender and the manipulative time waster. The wholesome pretender is a woman, and this kind of relates to that Donna Horde dynamic. This is a woman that deep down has a very kinky side to her. She's not really hard line about the whole monogamy piece, meaning she'll indulge in some promiscuous and or polyamorous sex. But initially, she's going to put on this facade, this what I call this disingenuous, prudish facade. And she's going to say things like, oh my God, Emily, you're talking to me so nasty. You're so provocative. Oh my God, no guy talks to me that way, blah, 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 blah. And she's going to resist you. She's even going to go as far as to criticize you. But if you stay on top of your game, and this is what kind of built my legend in college, was that I interacted with a lot of wholesome pretenders. And what guys saw from afar who might have been standing, I don't know, 4 or 5, 6 feet away, they would see me approach women. And for the first, 5 minutes or so, women would do everything short of cursing me out. And my frat brothers would be laughing like, damn, look at Alan. He crashed and burned it. That chick is giving him the business. Then they would see her a few minutes later smiling. I'd be whispering in her ear, her tongue would come out of her mouth. And at minimum, she would be writing down her phone number. And at maximum, we would be tongue kissing. And the guys would be like, dude, what kind of fucking Jedi mind trick was that you used, dude? What the fuck did you do, man? Man, that chick looked like she was like cursing you the fuck out, man. And then next thing we know, she like all warming up to you and shit. And I told him something. I said, I'm just straightforward. And when women criticize me or insult me or have a negative reaction, I don't let that freak me out. I remain cool, calm, and collected. And I would ask them, what would make you think that would give me the ammunition to be so cool, calm, and collected in the face of all that criticism and lighthearted insults? And they would have to think. And I'm going to ask you, Kente, what would make you think? Why would I stand there and take all that stuff?
Well, one is you're not bothered by rejection. I think for all of us, for all men, once you are not worried about rejection, it frees you up.
Okay, that's true what you said, but that's not the right answer. Anything else come to your mind?
It just doesn't bother you. I mean, you're gonna stay the
Okay, here's the thing. And I explain this in one of my books. Think of a food you just don't like at all.
That's hard for me.
It's easy for me.
I'm asking you, Kente. I was asking you since you were man.
Oh, sorry.
Give me one food, Kente, that you just don't like.
I'll go with somebody y'all know, Donald Trump.
No, a food.
Food.
Oh, food. I thought you said fool. Oh.
Okay. No.
Oh, okay. Changes the game. I don't like liver.
Okay.
And
now, if I offered you liver, would you go into 10 or 15 minutes of theatrics about why you don't like liver? Would you just simply say, I don't want to eat that?
I'll be like, I don't.
There you go. See, here's the deal. And guys who are listening and viewing, this is one of my first secrets I reveal in the book. If a woman is genuinely not interested in you, I mean, she's just not feeling you. Rejectors don't get theatrical. They just reject you. It would just simply, in a matter of seconds, say, I'm not interested.
My name is no.
They'll say, And what's interesting, and this is what trips a lot of my clients out when they experience it for themselves. I always tell my clients, because one of the reasons why a lot of guys are afraid of rejection is they're scared of those theatrics. But I tell guys, the women who truly reject you, you're going to love them because they're going to do it in such a cool, calm manner. They ain't going to start raising their voice and, be like, what do you mean? They're just going to say, no, bro. I ain't, But the wholesome pretenders, the ones who are trying to give you the misleading impression that they're not interested, those are the ones who do all the theatrical shit. And see, me knowing that, I just look at them while they're doing that. I just smirk, like get it out. Like, okay. Because I know, here's what I don't want to get too detailed, but with the wholesome pretender, what it is, her social, what I refer to as her social programming, is telling her, Linda, you know your mother told you to present yourself as a good girl. Present yourself to this man as a good girl. Let him know that you are a prudish, monogamy-oriented good girl. But figuratively speaking, her pussy is saying, no, I'm feeling this brother. He's bold. He's let me know what he wants. I think I might want to give him something. So it's like this internal debate going on. It's like you can say, like with the cartoon, they had the angel and the devil. The good girl voice is saying, no, girl, you better tell him that you're a good girl. But that little devil voice is saying, shit, I like this brother. He got swag. So I let him do all that theatrical shit. And then we end up hooking up. And guys were like, I started getting this reputation on campus. I went to Indiana University in Bloomington, Indiana. A lot of my frat brothers, I'm in a fraternity, Kappa Alpha Psi. Whenever guys start introducing me to guys, they say, hey, man, do y'all know Alan? Man, this dude is the most straightforward motherfucker you will ever meet in your life. Man, he just lets women know what he's really thinking. And that's why I subtitled my first book is Let the Women Know What You're Really Thinking. Because guys would always say, Alan Roger Currie, man, that dude, he lets women know what he's really thinking. And my brother, he came from another campus. And some of my frat brothers were telling him, they were like, man, your brother's a trip. Your brother's a trip. My brother was like, what you talking about? It's like, oh, man, your brother, man, he just talks to women in a way like, he'll start talking about stuff like them sucking his dick like 5 minutes into his first conversation with him. My brother hadn't seen that side of me. So he was like, wait a minute. Remember that movie we saw before you got in college? I was like, yeah, Top Dirty Tony. He said, are you emulating that guy in that movie? I said, yeah, you can say that. Because in this movie, the first scene, he seduces this doctor, and she was a classic pretender. And that, for me, that was mind-blowing because I was like, wait a minute. You be marrying women who will act like they're offended by what you're saying and act like they're turned off by what you're saying, but they're really not? For me, that was a major epiphany. Once I knew that women were basically putting on the facade of being turned off by some sexual you say, I was like, oh shit, I took that balance. So all that to say,
do you believe, Alan, that it's possible that a woman could be turned off by what you say?
I already told you, I explained. Women who are genuinely turned off don't get theatrical. They very calmly will let you know, I'm not feeling what you're saying.
What if they're insulted? You don't think that women could be insulted by your approach?
I've never had a woman be insulted by my approach.
That's interesting.
No. Because, see, for starters, I heard Kente joke around that some guys who haven't really read my book think Mode 1 is just about going up to a woman and saying, hey, my name is Frank and I want to fuck you. No, that's no. I don't do that. I'm smoother than that. You know. Most of the time, I don't really get into the X-rated shit until I get close enough to talk to a woman in her left ear. I'm really big. I call it the left ear zone. And I find that if a woman lets me get close enough to talk to her in her left ear, there ain't nothing about me that makes her feel comfortable. But again,
well, that's probably a good test, actually, because I don't think I would like somebody I don't know in my ear like that.
See, that's
I think I would instantly like recoil, no matter what. Like I would probably just instantly.
This is the thing. You hit it on the head machine. This is why, number one, why I tell guys, and again, it's usually guys and women who haven't read my book. They'll go around and tell people, oh, I don't get this technique where he just goes through and say, hey, I want to fuck you. Okay, I'll give you a classic example. I was in Las Vegas speaking at this conference. And there was these fans of mine there. And they said, Alan, can we do our impersonation of you? I said, sure, just make it good. So they started acting like they were approaching a woman, and they started talking real loud. They were like, hey, baby, I want to get up all in that pussy. Yeah, I want to fuck the shit out of you. I was like, whoa. I said, where you getting that from? They was like, wasn't that us being more one like you? I said, what video have you ever seen where I've ever approached a woman like that? And they said, well, we haven't seen a video. I said, where have I described that in any book I've ever read? And they said, well, we just assume. I said, there you go. They said, assumption is king of all fuck-ups. So that next day, I got on stage, and I had a female assistant, and I showed how I interact with women. And it was so interesting. You could hear a pin drop in this auditorium, because everybody's looking at me like, damn, so that's how Alan does it. Damn, all this time. And they basically saw that my shit, if I say so, they saw that my shit was smooth. You know, because the first thing I told them I do, and what Rasheem touched on, I read a woman's body language. I get into, most body language experts say there's a 3-foot radius around us that represents our space. Yep. So this is what I do. I purposely get into a woman's space. I get within 3 feet of it, maybe like say 2 feet away from us. And I see how she responds to that. Now, if I can read that a woman is looking at me like, I'm kind of uncomfortable with your presence. Why would I want to start talking about fucking her or licking her pussy or anything like that? You know, so I take everything in about her. And it's not until she gives me the body language signs that she's receptive. But see, this goes back to the wholesome pretender. Here's what's interesting. I've had women have a theatrical reaction. Like, I can't believe you're talking to me like this. But yet, they'll take a step closer to me.
Mm-hmm.
And see, right there, that lets me know I don't care what she's saying. She could be saying, I think you're an asshole and a jerk for talking to me like that. But she moving closer to me. And I just start talking in the ear. Matter of fact, quick story, Kente. I was doing my show, I think about a year and a half ago. And this woman calls in. And first she called in to criticize me about something. And then I started flirting with her, you know, and she warmed up to me and got receptive. So then we ended up having a private conversation a couple of days later. And it was interesting. She's into whole metaphysical energy. Now, this woman had never met me. She only talked to me on my radio show over the phone. But she said, Alan, you're misleading your male fans and your male clients. I said, in what way? She said, you're not telling the whole truth. I said, okay, please explain. She said, you giving guys the impression that you just walk up to women and talk shit to them, and then they just magically open up their legs for you. I said, no, I don't think I've ever quite described it quite that way, but for argument's sake, okay, listen. She said, no, you know what? I can tell listening to you. And she ended up being on point. She said, you read women. Before you ever say anything sexually explicit, you take in everything about them, how they use their eyes, their vocal inflections, how they mess with their hands, and you read their voice because you read mine while I was on the phone on your show. So you know from reading a woman's voice if you'll be successful in seducing them or not. I said, damn. I said, that was a pretty good assessment. I said, she said, oh, I studied metaphysical energy for years. I know this. And I know just from listening, you don't just walk up and just randomly and blindly start saying stuff. You take in the essence of that woman. And you know when a woman is putting on, say, a facade, that you know you can break through that facade. And so, yeah, she was totally on point. But, yeah, that's what I do. So that's how I let my guys know. No, I don't just walk up to women and just say, hey, I'm Roger Currie. I want to stick my dick in. I ain't even smooth. Matter of fact, one thing I do sometimes, I'll approach women and I won't say shit when I first approach. I just give them a look. I just look into their eyes and I wait for them to respond to how I'm looking at their eyes. And something that simple will tell me a lot about them. But again, the biggest point was what Rashim said. What I read is this. If I'm saying anything to a woman, and as I attempt to get closer, she like leans back or steps back, in my mind, that's when I'll say, oh, no, I'm not saying anything X-rated to this woman. Because there's something about my presence that's making her feel at least a wee bit uncomfortable.
And so, can you impart that wisdom to your clients?
Oh yeah,
on how to read.
I teach them how to. Yeah, that's what. Matter of fact, I'm going to fly out to Los Angeles in a couple of weeks and working with a few clients, and that's part of when I do my one-on-one coaching. I teach men how to read a woman's body language, and I teach them how to make their eye contact more self-assured, their voice more smooth and seductive, and just make them congruent. Because two words I use a lot when I work with my clients is congruent and incongruent. And this also relates to the wholesome pretenders. See, this is how you can tell. Like, one thing I teach my male clients how to do is distinguish between a rejecter and a wholesome pretender and a reciprocator and a manipulative time waster. And how do I do that? Reciprocators, their words are going to be congruent with their body language and their behavior. Rejectors, their words are going to be congruent. So in other words, reciprocator, if they're interested, everything about them is going to say, I'm interested. Words and body language. Rejector, if they're not interested, everything about them is going to say, I'm not interested. Words and body language.
Wait, real quick on that. So there was someone in the chat who mentioned that they have times where they are interested, and it's hard for people to read their interests. How can you help them, either of you, Maisha or Alan? How can you help them to express their interest more? What can they do to express to a person that they're interested?
Oh, there's a number of ways. I'll let Maisha take it, but there's a number of ways.
Okay.
Oh, I was going to say, so being a